Welcome, everyone. Today you have a special treat. I'm interviewing Robert Hitz, who has been playing the piano and improvising and teaching improvisation for a long time. This is Beth Green, and this is the Improvisational Pianist. So, first of all, Robert, please welcome to our show. And tell us a little bit about yourself before we get too into it.
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me as the beginning of the improvisational pianist. And I am a composer, a pianist, and I started uh, many years ago. In fact, I celebrated my 50th year of playing the piano last year. And I
Whoa!
started as a playing classical music, and throughout my teens, and I went to the Peabody Conservatory and Syracuse University. And somewhere in that time, which we'll talk about later, I started improvising. And it was a special moment. It's transformed my life, and I play so much more by feel. I guide people pretty much on a daily basis with all of my students and colleagues, and it's good.
That is fantastic. I'm going to be asking you some questions from the perspective of a potential student or a potential improviser, and I like your responses. But first, I would like you to share with us in a musical way, because you improvise, how you were feeling about your piano playing, because obviously you were very skilled and well trained, how you were feeling about music and the piano before you discovered improvisation. So just take it away.
Well, I am going to preface this is that I was studying with a teacher at that time who was a complete perfectionist, and I could do nothing right.
Exactly, and that's exactly. And many of us feel the same way about ourselves. If even if it isn't the teacher, it may be us that feels that we can do nothing right. So let's please share with us musically how you were feeling, and let's see who understands this.
And then I started to improvise one day when I didn't have my glasses. And I was 22 years old, and the music went from black and white and awfully stiff to Technicolor.
What I felt in that, Robert, was a sense of peace and relaxation. That was the strongest feeling that I had when you were playing. It's like, ah. Well, I hadn't thought that I was going to do this, but I'm going to do something because some of you know, this is actually our third video, but this is my first interview, and I'm so delighted to have Robert for it. Um, that I became disabled when I was 15 years old, and I couldn't play the piano at all for 58 years. And I felt like I missed it. I really missed it. And I got the inner guidance to improvise. And when I first sat down to improvise, I was brought up with the classical training too. This is how I played. didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. I felt frustrated and stuck. And I contacted Robert because I had been given this inner guidance that I should improvise only, not try to play music because when I played classical music, I became crippled. And I found Robert on the internet and I contacted him and we met a couple of times. And I think I broke my arm shortly afterwards and discontinued. But what I saw was here is a guy who is just having fun. And I was miserable at the piano, right? And he was just having fun, and that's the way he was teaching, and he was making everybody relaxed, and he just played with it and encouraged us to play too. And he also told me if I wanted to get better improvising, I should just improvise. So even though I didn't see him again for years, he had a tremendous impact on my life because I started improvising. And it was just coming. And I just kept improvising. I kept improvising, and it just kept growing and growing and growing. So he was a very critical part of my life. And improvisation has freed me because I could not play the piano. And now I'm 76, and I am, and I'm playing concerts and all this. But anyway, I don't want to talk about myself, but that is just awesome. Now, tell me a little bit and talk to our audience about this. Um, who comes to you wanting to improvise? Old people, young people, classical students, beginners. Tell us about the people who come to you and why did they want to improvise?
Maybe I'll give you a couple examples. And one is a fairly new student to me, but she had studied classically for many years, um, and she's now a writer. She's retired, and she said she heard me play at I did a concert, and she was there, and she said, okay, she's a writer, so she said, when I finish this project, this book, said, I'm going to study with you. So, and she came, she wanted to learn how to improvise. And a big part of what I also do is um, I start people from the very beginning improvising. That is one of the primary ways of first addressing an instrument. And it actually allows you to be a musician rather than just a piano player.
Mm,
So you can transfer these to any skills. So this is an adult, and she is now, because she's learning her scales and learning a really proper technique and building a pretty tremendous technique.
mm,
Now she has a vocabulary that's rich, and
mm.
as she continues, that's one option. And another one is a 6 year old who's just started, and she just takes to improvisation, and she's so I teach theory at the piano and improvisation from the piano.
That's excellent. So it's all really hands on. But why did people want to improvise? What are you feeling about why? I'm not saying you ever asked them, but from your many years of experience, what do you think is the driving force?
Well, I think like for most people, there's very two different um, things that happen. The classical music um, repertoire is wonderful, but it is like reading a book and replicating these things. You can put yourself into it, which is absolutely amazing, but it's not directly from you.
Yes,
So, learning to improvise, you are on your way to becoming a composer, and you are telling your story
yes,
every single time. So it is you living in the moment.
yes, yes. You said there were two things, I think. Do you remember what the second one was? Or did
Oh,
I make that up?
well, I said that there were two different ways of making music. of
Oh, I
replicating the
see. Okay,
music,
I
and
misunderstood
then
you. Great.
which is
Yeah,
and when you are improvising, you're using the same frontal lobe that you do when you're telling a personal story.
absolutely. So, and you're also your heart is speaking, and you feel completely connected. What I find in improvising is that the piano and I become one, because I'm just sitting there and I'm listening in a way that I never listened when I was studying classical music, which was so many years ago. But I didn't listen.
Right. I have a technique that I call a listening improvisation to learn how to turn your mind around so that you're following and doing what is asked
Mm-hmm.
rather than dictating. Because
Ex-
if you're always judging what you're doing, then you pretty much stop your improvisation dead in the water.
yes.
Theater people know this as well because you can't do it in theater. They say the only word is yes. And
Yeah.
let me ask you a question.
Of
When
course.
I said to you, I said to get better with improvisation, just improvise. And I know for me, it gradually opened up. It was not as if I had this one door day and it's like everything happened. I mean, a lot happened that first day for me, but over time, it opened more and more to a point now where I'm so free. It's like channeling. And I do this for groups, I do it for individuals, I do it with my students. And I have noticed from when I first met you to now, you are so open.
Hmm. Thank you.
How does that feel to you? What have you noticed in terms of that progression?
I totally understand. I started first. I amazed myself that I was even playing because remember, for 58 years I couldn't even play the piano, and then I started very haltingly. But it's amazing how quickly I found myself actually improvising. It may not have sounded that good to me, but I decided that I didn't care. I was going to not criticize. I wasn't going to sit outside myself and say that's the wrong note because nobody can tell me what's the right note. And I very quickly started my own program, which I used to call Dreamers of Peace, which is called now Beth Green's Magical Piano Improvisations. And I was doing it publicly. And I never could play the piano in public before. I was too scared. And I got a lot of encouragement and feedback from people, and that gave me courage. And the more courage I had, the more crazy I became at the piano and the more free I became. And also, my technique just developed, even though I cannot play more than maybe 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes max at a time before I get crippled. Um, just doing it all the time. It just got better and better until I reached the point one day when I realized that I didn't exist anymore when I was playing the piano. I was just like an extension of the instrument. You know what I'm talking about. And the sound, and I was in it, and I didn't care. I wasn't worried about the audience. I didn't care what they thought, and it was an amazing life experience, which is I'm so grateful just to have the experience. Even if nobody ever liked my music or didn't want to listen to me, I feel like a different person. It gives me energy. I come to the piano and I'm filled with much more energy, and I'm very weak physically. And when I sit down at the piano, you'd never know that I was this disabled. It's the only time that I don't feel disabled, even though I have problems with my hands and my arms, my elbows. Is like
I would never know.
you'd never know.
Never.
I'm flying around the keyboard, and it's the only thing I can do that's physical. It's like I'm an athlete all of a
Yeah.
sudden.
So, do you think anyone can improvise?
Absolutely. I do. I'm so glad you asked me that question because I was going to ask you that question. I think if I can do it, all you have to do is connect to your soul and have the willingness to expose yourself and get over the idea that life has to be perfect because nothing ever is. So I want you to play Life Isn't Perfect.
It's not. And today is a day that feels like that.
except we're having a great interview. Well, that sounded like you were getting very relaxed about life not being perfect. so,
Correct.
so
That's,
I
trust is my word these days. Trust.
That's a very good word. So I'd like to say one thing, just for if anyone is confused, why I was able to play improvise and not play classical music is, first of all, the technique required, but also I had to play certain notes in a certain order. I can't do that. I can play what I can play. My fingers move the way they can move. I don't have to stretch. I don't have to go into awkward positions. I can just play what I can. And that's, you see, I've been learning this about life, you know. Don't do what you think you should do, do what you can. Because that idea that you should follow some standard, something, stops us from doing anything. And that's true in everything in life. You know, just do what you can and be free. So I'd like to ask you one more question
Great.
um, before I have you tell people how they can reach you, um, which is, I just had it. I just forgot the question. Wait, I'm going to get it back. Uh, what do you think is the biggest obstacle that people face in themselves, other than like, I don't have a piano, right? uh, to either improvise or even reach out to a teacher like you? You know, what freezes people around improvisation?
I think a lot of it is that people, first of all, don't think they can do it. They
Yes.
think that because they don't know what to do, that they can't do it. Um, Another is the whole judgment thing that we all have. Is like, oh, this is a huge one. The feeling that it should be good,
Yes.
and it's like, no, you can be really bad at it, and it's good. It's fine because I'm going through that myself with many number of things right now, of allowing myself to be bad at it,
Mhm.
and to realize there is so much to be learned from doing something, even as a beginner. When you are doing it badly, you are still learning important things about yourself.
Oh,
And so I
yes.
think,
Oh, that's wonderful. Those were wonderful answers. Um, I certainly felt frozen. I certainly didn't. I never thought that I could improvise. Ever. Ever. And now I can't stop. Of course, that's all I can do. So I would like to just share this, that Robert has a way of teaching you that's very step by step, that you have like a lot of like tricycles and, somebody helping you along when you're first getting on a bike. You know what I'm saying? He has a lot of tools and techniques which I think make learning how to improvise much easier because you're giving them a way to,
Hmm.
take this step and take that step. That was my experience with you, and I think from what I've seen, you're still doing that. Um, Whereas my approach to it is see what the block is to you knowing what the next note is. But it's a whole different, like it's mine is more like a psychological, therapeutic sort of thing. It's like, how come you don't know that the next note is really, what's blocking you? Oh, my father, hit me when I was 5, and I've been afraid to run around the house ever since. So, but I think that your tools are super helpful and a really great way for people to get started. And I really would love people to contact you. If you're sitting there wondering whether or not you should contact Robert about learning improvisation, just do it. That would be what I would say. So, how do people get in touch with you?
Well, the simplest way is roberthitz.com. That's my name, Robert Hitz, HITZ.com. And on there, you'll see a lot of my events, videos, my music, and also a contact. And we'll be sure to get back to you because
Yeah, because we want this to spread like a virus.
and you can also listen to my music on any of the online um, platforms. So I'm pretty much all over the web that way. So pretty easy to find.
That's great. Is there anything else that you would like to share that I didn't ask you before we go today?
I think that to follow the fun. Just make sure that you know. As I say, when we're talking about making music, people say you play an instrument. You don't work an instrument, and so you need to make it fun. And I will then leave with my a little quote here from Igor Stravinsky, who's a famous 20th century composer. The trouble with music, appreciation in general, is that people are taught to respect it too much. They should be taught to love it instead. Just
Yes,
love it. Be in love with it.
for the
So,
love of music
yeah.
and for the
So,
love of yourself.
are we gonna do a little conversation to take us
Sh-
out?
sure, we can do that. Sure. Would you like? I was just going to say, I need to say goodbye to you in music, but let's do a conversation instead.
Hmm? Just a few. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you for a wonderful conversation. I hope that it has been super helpful to everyone who listened.
Well, it was wonderful. Thank you, Beth. Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye bye.